Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. I wanted to talk about the new PlayStation VR game Beat Saber that just came out. And you would think I would love this game. I'm particularly going to just pass on it. But when this game was revealed and this trailer came out, I remember thinking to myself, wow, there's an interesting idea for a video, something a little bit different from what I normally talk about. Why aren't left-handed people outraged at this game? Now take everything I'm about to say in this video with a pinch of salt. This is not intentionally to be a controversial video, but it just occurred to me, just to stir the pot a bit, that we live in a modern day of people getting outraged at a lot of things, and it just occurred to me, hey, there's a perfectly valid, I think, reason that left-handed people should be up in arms about Beat Saber. And I don't think it's going to happen, and I think it's a little weird, and I just thought I would discuss it here. To begin with, let's just spare a moment and think about the poor lefties. They are living in a world that is really just not designed with them in mind. There's plenty of things that they have to interact with that just don't consider the left-handed perspective. And although I myself am right-handed, I sympathize because being over 6 feet tall, I know what it's like to live in a world that's not designed for you. And in fact, this whole thing about left-handed people not really fitting in a right-handed person's world, that goes way back to medieval times and knights on horseback and heraldry specifically. Because you used to have various families would paint their crest or their coat of arms on their shields, and different rules were set up for how a shield's decoration is supposed to be handled. One of the mainstays of the ruling is the center is a pale, a cross along the center is a fess. If you have a stripe that goes from top left to bottom right, it's called a bend. And famously, if it goes in the opposite direction, it is called a bend sinister. Now that sounds particularly evil, but what that is the word sinister is Latin for left. And the Latin word for right is dexter. So dexter and sinister are heraldic terms that have actually kind of moved on to other parts of our lives, and now unfortunately, the word sinister has taken on a completely different meaning, and I kind of feel sorry for left-handed folks because that moniker has stuck with us for centuries. A further association of sinister and the sinister bend in heraldry being a negative thing, in cases where there was bastardy going on, a child born out of wedlock in a family with titles, the designation that this person is of bastard origin was signified by the sinister bend. There are a few examples that show the big strike going across the shield in the wrong direction. Wrong in the sense of, compared to people who are in the family, the sash or the stripe would be a regular bend. That's one indication that a left-handed sign or something of the sinister nature is actually a negative. Even historically, the Great Seal of the United States, which shows an eagle clutching an olive branch, the olive branch is in the right hand, the dexter talon, and there are arrows in the left talon, the sinister talon. And that's sort of the design of that was to indicate the United States' intention toward peace. Even the eagle faces toward the right, the dexter, the direction of honor. This historical bias that we have is even prevalent today, where anytime you hear the phrase, his right-hand man, that's a sign of something positive and beneficial. The dexter is good, the sinister is bad. The dexter has actually gone on to be so many more things, like you refer to dexterity in Dungeons & Dragons, and it's used in everyday speech as well. Or ambidexterity, if you have the equal skill with both left or right hand, somehow Dexter got that designation. Fortunately, this old-fashioned predilection toward everything to do with the right being good and everything to do with the left being bad has been countered by some pretty awesome left-handed people in the world. And let's not forget, it's not like the Dexter is always a positive thing. Sometimes he can be downright evil. So where does this all relate back to Beat Saber? Now that I'm actually showing that footage again, I think a lot of you are starting to clue in what kind of direction this sort of humorous take on outrage culture is aiming at. In the game, you use a couple of lightsabers to chop up some blocks with directions on them. That's all very fine and good. But it's the choice of the colors and which handedness those colors are in that I'm thinking a lot of people should be getting pretty up in arms about. Yes, you've guessed it, the lightsaber on the left is red, and the lightsaber on the right is blue. And that's, for anybody who knows the Star Wars world, all of the Sith had red lightsabers. They were the enemy, they were the villain. They all used that blood red saber constantly. The blue was reserved for the heroes, the good guys, our Jedi Knights. So here we are in a game where you're using a red lightsaber and a blue lightsaber for designation of the different points of the rhythm game. But why did they choose for the left to be the one holding the sword of the villain, while the right is the one that's holding the sword of the hero? So perhaps in programming the game, the developers just had a 50-50 shot of which color was going to end up on which side, and they accidentally put the red on the left. Or maybe it was an aesthetic choice. Maybe in doing the testing, they thought it looks better on the left than it does on the right. Or maybe the developers are big heraldry aficionados and they wanted to actually tip a hat to the idea of the Dexter and the Sinister by intentionally doing this. I'm not sure. I just know that we are in a modern era where a lot of people seem to get pretty outraged and insulted about kind of the most obscure and bizarre things, and I just thought, okay, well, here's perfectly good cannon fodder for people to be really, really incensed and outraged and to lead arguing riots up the streets about, my goodness, they put the evil saber in the hand of the left. We left-handed folks will not stand for this, or something to that effect. And I just thought that might be kind of a funny and certainly not serious, little different type of a video for me to put together for Beat Saber. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there and just see what comments I get on this one. Until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.